Thank you very much, Mr. Govers, for joining us. I will give you the same question I gave to Mr. Anholt. Can the sector marketing actually replace a coherent branding strategy?
Thanks, Adrian, for that question, and thanks for having me on the show. No, I don't think sectorial marketing can replace branding because they're two different things. If you're doing marketing, so let's say tourism marketing or investment promotion or talent attraction, those in themselves are very different things. So tourism marketing obviously is a mass market activity aimed at a mass market of consumers, individuals, travelers, where, for instance, investment promotion is more of a sales operation because you're trying to talk to major investors, and that's usually a personal selling. It's a one-on-one communication. So those in themselves are very different things. Now, brand and managing your brand reputation is an activity that aims to raise name awareness of a location, of your city, region, or country, and improve its reputation. So it's about managing associations that people have in their minds. So that's very different from marketing. And actually, what we're trying to do when we're talking about nation branding or city branding, so managing the reputation of a place, we're actually trying to influence the context within which marketing activities are received on the receiving end. So by your audience, by your target markets, and by the general public. And therefore, that's why brand management and reputation management is important, because we know that if you have name awareness, so if people have heard of your city or your country and you have a positive reputation, it makes everything else easier. So it's easier to sell your destination to tourists, it's easier to attract investors, it's easier to attract talent within that context. So brand management, reputation management is influencing the context. Marketing is where you sell a product to a target market, which is completely legitimate. It's perfectly fine to do advertising to sell your tourism product to potential tourists, assuming you're doing your targeting very well. Now, the risk if you say that tourism marketing or any other type of sectorial marketing can replace branding, that's very risky. And we've got plenty of examples where this has gone wrong. So let's say, for instance, Amsterdam or Barcelona or Venice. Those are places that have very much focused in the past on pushing the tourism product. And particularly tourism is risky because, like I said, it's a mass audience activity. You're trying to aim mass audiences internationally, consumers, tourists, travelers. And therefore, it's very often it's got high budget and it's got high visibility. So tourism to determine the reputation of your city or your country, that might be good for tourism and it might bring in tourist dollars, but it might actually be detrimental to other activities. And that's what we've seen in quite a few cities just before COVID and also again now post-COVID, where they're suffering from over-tourism because they've allowed the tourism reputation to spiral out of control. And that can then be detrimental to other activities. So brand management is the overarching activity of managing your reputation and steering various sectors towards a common goal for the city, the region, or the country.
For presenting the strength of the brand, you are using a set of indexes. One of the most famous being the Nation Brand Index, or NBI. Yeah. I see that it is more about perception than actual performance of the country. Can you please explain why did you look at the countries this way? Why not using actual statistical data and rather the perception of the people from those other countries?
Mm. Well, because they're two very different things. If you look at actual performance of a country, that's of course relevant, and many places do that because you've got your economic indicators. So we know the number of visitors, we know what they spend, we know the number of nights that they spend, we know how much investment we attract. All of those things are known. And like I said, they depend to some extent on your reputation. Actually, we've studied that there's an over 60% correlation between perception and performance. But there are many other factors, of course, that influence performance. Just for one example, the exchange rate. So if you're not in the Eurozone and you have a different currency, or like say the United Kingdom with the British pound, the exchange rate between the euro and the pound might actually influence the attraction of investment and the attractions of tourists. Does it therefore mean that your reputation has improved or decreased? No, of course it doesn't. So there are many factors influencing real performance economically on top of the reputation that you have. So you need to measure your reputation separately, and this is what the Nation Brands Index does. So this was developed almost 20 years ago by Simon Anholt. Initially, he ran it himself for a couple of years. Then it was managed by GfK, a global research company, and that was then handed over to Ipsos, which is running it now, again, a global research company. And currently, they're doing 60,000 respondents in 20 countries, asking these consumers to comment on how well they regard other countries on 6 dimensions. So questions are being asked about the tourism of a country, about its people, about the governance, about the exports, about the investment in immigration, and about its cultural heritage. So 6 dimensions on which reputation is measured. 6 dimensions on which questions are being asked in a survey to these 60,000 respondents. And that then leads to a ranking of 60 target countries. So those are the countries that are actually in the index that consumers around the world in these 20 countries are being asked about.
Slovakia performs quite on average level, to say
Yep.
to say it well. Why is that so?
It's okay.
What is helping to shape the image of the country, and what, on the other hand, is hurting it?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting, Slovakia. Actually, it's very interesting to look at it in the terms of the Visegrad group. So if we look at Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, or Czechia and Slovakia together, they are actually very closely linked to each other. So they sort of measure, sort of move in the Nation Brands Index as a cohort. We've got Poland at 28. So there's 60 countries, like I said, in the index. Only 60 countries are being measured. 28 is for Czech Republic. Then 33, if I remember correctly, is Hungary. And then 35 is Slovakia. So Slovakia is usually closing the group of 4, which are always very closely together, even if we look at their scores on the 6 dimensions, so tourism versus investment in immigration versus governance versus people versus cultural heritage, etc. They every time it's the same thing. So you've got Poland, they're always sort of in the middle, so around about 30, and then you've got Poland first, Czech Republic second, Hungary third, and Slovakia fourth. So on the one hand, that is good news because, it moves around the average. So it's not bad, certainly not bad. But the issue is, and that's more so for Hungary, Czechia, and Slovakia, more so than for Poland, it's a familiarity problem. So we measure familiarity separately. So we ask people whether they admire other countries on those 6 dimensions, but we also ask them separately, how familiar are you with this country? And there we actually see that those 3 countries are at the bottom of the ranking. So their familiarity is very, very low. So people will say, never heard of this country, or yes, I've heard the name, but I don't know anything about it, right? So that is really, unlike for Poland, which is, again, sort of average, for the other 3 countries, and particularly Slovakia, it's very, very, very low. It's all the way down at the bottom of the index. So familiarity is the challenge, where people find it difficult, particularly, of course, as former Soviet Union or its sphere of influence countries. Emerging, from the 1990s, it has been a challenge to get onto people's mental maps. And this is, I think, what really needs to change. And also, you want to break away from the group. So you want to make sure that your national reputation gets you a unique positioning, that it separates its national identity from these other countries. And then increasing your name awareness and a specific reputation for your country, you might emerge out of the group and up in the index.
Isn't that an issue of size of the country? I can understand why more people know about Poland, but when I look at the index, I saw that many people didn't actually know about Slovakia. They knew nothing. Of course, people from Poland they knew, people from Russia, people from Germany, because those are like close countries. But people from other parts of the world, they didn't even hear about Slovakia.
Yeah. Well, yes and no. So size it can be an issue. So of course we know that bigger countries are just more in our face, right? Because they've got they bring in lots more tourists. They're influential. So they're in the news. So obviously large countries. But then we're talking basically about maybe top 10 countries in the world that get quite a bit of attention. So most countries don't get that attention. Call them small, I don't know. But being small doesn't necessarily mean that you're not able to get yourself a reputation. For instance, my home country, where I was born and grew up, the Netherlands. I now live in Belgium. Both, by the way, Belgium and the Netherlands, tiny countries, they actually have quite a bit of a reputation. So they're number 12 and number 14, if I remember correctly, in the Nation Brands Index. So if you go to the top 10, so Netherlands and Belgium are not in the top 10. But if you look at the top 10, you've got big countries like Italy, Germany, Canada, New Zealand, Japan, etc. So it's very difficult to get into the top 10 because both they have name awareness and they've got a strong reputation. But if you're number 12 or 14, you're doing very, very well. And those are small countries. Switzerland, another one example that's doing very, very well.